Gregory, my son, is high-functioning autistic, and we have presented several times at ASU, and you'll learn a little more about the story. I just want to give everybody a chance to get in because we actually don't start for 5 more minutes. But people know that Gregory does do something, whatever that something is. And that label sometimes means limits for us, or limits for our children, or the people we work for. And I tell people, as a mom, you know, you get a diagnosis for your child, and they'll say, what is it, a boy or a girl? And you say, I don't care, I just want him to be healthy. I just want her to be healthy. That's what I want. I want them to be healthy and happy. And so you hear the word disability, and it's like getting hit by a Mack truck. You're standing in the road, it's like, boom. And sometimes you come across parents and different moms and educators, aides, advocates, siblings, fathers, grandparents, just tired. They're just tired and they're looking for a little more hope. So some of this is about our challenges, but most of it is about the possibilities. You know, I'd like to say, I'd like you guys going out of here going, B-R-E-D-L-E-Y, because that was awesome this morning. And if you didn't get to hear this morning's keynote speaker, Bradley Cohen, I encourage you to get his book, look him up. He's got some great stories. With that said, we're a little ahead of time, but we're going to get started. think I've seen that 20 times, and every time I see it, sometimes it just brings me to tears, because you realize how difficult things may be in your life and somebody else's life who has that goal, they go for that goal, and what makes them any different than any of us who strive to be better than what we were yesterday. So this conference, this piece, has a great meaning to us. Last year, Gregory received a scholarship for this conference, and he left with such excitement. He was in his junior year at ASU to get a degree in education, special education. And there were some challenges. Anyone who teaches special education knows it's not an easy task. So he gets towards the end of the program, and tackling a classroom isn't that easy. And so he is looking for, well, what else is there? He comes out of the conference and he is so excited. He wants to be a motivational speaker. And that's why we're here today. So you're like, why is Mom talking so much? Oh, that's what she does. It's like the kid in school who needs medication. Anywho, with that, we go through and we're told, and you hear, how many times have you heard, you can't do this, you can't do that. And you go through and then they say, you won't ever be able to do that. What are you doing? And as time goes by, you say, we can't help you. You know the story. We don't have a story. We don't have a program. We don't have staff. We don't have the money. We've never done it before. We haven't done that before. What are you asking us to do? We're here to tell you today that, yes, you can. Yes, I can. This is Gregory's story. Yes, he can. And you know what? All of you out there, if you have a challenge, if you have a sibling, if you have a son or a daughter, a husband or a wife who needs some help, sometimes we just need to be reminded, yes, I can. And what that looks like, what it looks like to see the possibilities. So sometimes the picture says a million words. So to you, is that the face of autism? Because I'd like it to be the new cover if possible. So let's see how that flies. With that said, we get to a point, we all come to a fork in the road. And everything, like I said, from the diagnosis where you feel like you get hit by a Mack truck. What do you do? Where do you turn? When Gregory was diagnosed, autism wasn't 1 in 150. It wasn't even anything. You went to your local bookstore, and I can tell you still today, you could find one book on the bookshelf that someone was willing to buy. And we were blessed to get an invitation to a conference we snuck into because I wasn't a teacher. And a lady by the name of Temple Grandin was speaking there. And how amazing to hear her story. So what I'd like to share with you is our transition, not just from high school to college a little bit, and then Gregory will share his piece, but the transition to the next step. And the next step for us is going from a bachelor's program to a master's program. And I'd like to share with you the letter that I wrote to the folks, all the folks with the PhDs in communications. I love ASU because they said if they could, their degree wouldn't just be in communications, but it would be called a degree in communications and advocacy. And I'm like, hooray. So to the leaders who educate and empower, those who pursue advocacy, I wholeheartedly agree with you that it's through information, education, and advocacy that we as individuals and a society grow in our acceptance of those who might not otherwise have a voice. As stated in ASU MAC's Graduate Student Handbook, advocacy is the calling to the responsibility we have in the global age. Okay, the part that wasn't in this letter, you want to write a good letter to advocate for people you're working for, get their handbook, their guideline, and their vision, and use all of their words. How can they ever say no? Oh, I'm sorry, we can't help you. Anyway, in April 2013, autism was Awareness Month in April. We have tremendous growth in statistics and information published regarding autism just in the past 15 years. My focus on this time period is in direct connection with my son's diagnosis At that time, autism was not in the mainstream media, and you were lucky to find 2 or 3 publications at your local bookstore. And the subject of self-contained classrooms seemed to be the only option in elementary education. It was at the intersection of our public and private life that we were struck head-on by a Mack truck. You notice that Mack truck comes up a lot in my analogies. As dramatic as that may sound, it's exactly how we felt. We searched to find any little piece of information of what's next and where do we go from here, to think outside of the box. It was not just about blazing trails for my son, but it was about paving paths for those who followed. It was teaching him and others that building a community is a powerful tool in implementing change. Those extraordinary experiences resonate in our life, and we are so grateful for those who helped us. When focusing on how to help one, we must identify the challenges faced by an individual with, quote-unquote, a disability. And so there are many reminders of those can'ts. It can't be done, and the obstacles that will be faced. But it is amazing how those obstacles, when faced head-on, we discover things like the light bulb, the minute mile, which is less than a minute, and now the surface of the moon and beyond. My son continues to amaze even us. From memorization in everyone's line when in children's theater, to weekly announcement at high school, to homecoming camp, there didn't seem to be a challenge he wouldn't tackle. He will be graduating summa cum laude this May from ASU with a bachelor's in educational studies in hopes to pursue his master's in communications. The irony is that autism comes with challenges in communications and socialization. He hopes to utilize the knowledge obtained in his education to be communication and to be able to teach his mother to read, a motivational speaker, and advocate for others with disabilities. I'm writing this in hopes that, if necessary, it can be considered as a supplement to the application process. And I've attached several letters. They actually, when you're going for your master's, want you to write a description about yourself, submit something you've done in writing in the past, and 3 letters of recommendation. We've asked for the supplement. We were granted to submit the supplement. He did have his 3 with an additional 13 letters, all from past educators everywhere from 3rd grade to college. And I think that says a lot for the people in his life that have helped him along the way. At some point, Temple Grandin was given the same consideration by those who saw her potential, not her disability. Also diagnosed with autism, she received her master's in animal science from ASU in 1975 and went on to receive her doctoral degree. She's the main speaker at the first conference I attended with autism, and she continues to speak and advocate for those with autism. I don't have a degree in communications, however, I feel like I have a lifetime experience in advocacy. My personal statement was more than 500 words, and letters of recommendation far greater than 3. I thank you for your time and consideration. And so with that, again, this is about seeing the possibilities, finding the fork in the road, and saying, what is my piece? What is my piece to help that individual in my life find their happiness? How this conference got its title was the sign on the ground that says, see the possibilities. We bought it at the store, and it hangs over our kitchen window that when you look out at the things that are light, that are beauty, that are in front of you, you ideally see the possibilities. And the other piece of it is finding your happiness. Gregory will tell you a little bit more, but he's an awesome writer, and he has a blog, and he also wrote a memoir called Finding Your Happiness that he'd like to publish, so when it's out there, look for it. He wants to be able to inspire people. He wants to be able to say, when he went for his degree, he wanted to teach. He wanted to be a special education teacher because he did have the teachers who gave back. He had those teachers that stood up and made a difference. I called those people angels, and you'll find out that my spelling is atrocious, so the word came out angles all the time. And I'm thinking, that's a good analogy too. You're going up the line, you gotta take a sharp left, right? oh, left, right. And it's those angles, it's those folks, it's those of you, those parents who inspire other parents, those with disabilities that make other people with challenges say, I can do that, yes I can reach that next goal. I can, have that cheer, I can be the principal of the school, I can be the teacher, I can be that person who reached that kid nobody else could reach. And so with that, with this, we hope to be the change that we want to see in the world. We hope to inspire, we hope to encourage, we hope, and we continue to hope. Because with those things, it's with those hopes things have changed. Autism has come a long way. Back from when the word was out there, people thought mothers were cold and they weren't snuggling their kids, to let's put them in a special little building or place, I think they were called institutions. And so it's come a long way. And I'm thankful actually for a lot of you that sit here and put together these conferences that teach, that advocate, that help us parents who sometimes on some days we're just tired. We're tired. We're tired of hearing no. We're tired of hearing can't help you. I'm tired. And so, and for those of you with the challenges every day, you have to look for those people. You have to build your community. There is a thing as far as if someone says, if you say to yourself, I can or I can't, you're right. I think Henry Ford said that. And so with that, what I'm going to do, if I have this little thing in order, I was one slide off last time, so you got to bear with me. With that, I am going to hand this over to Gregory, because this really is about Gregory. And Gregory will tell you a little more about himself. And so, if you need him to slow down or something, or speed up, just let us know, let him know. And I'm going to give him the mic and work this thing over here.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you all for coming. My name is Gregory Ohanessian. I am autistic, and I am going for my master's at Arizona State University under Communication Studies. So one of my biggest goals is to become a motivational speaker, and it was because of the conference last year with last year's keynote speaker, and there was also I had the chance to go up in front of a panel with ASU's Disability Resource Center on the Tempe campus. And I for so long I've been on the West, and I was able to speak with the people at Tempe. So what I'm going to share with you right now is a blog piece called Facing the Waves. It's available on my blog called The Autistic Blogger. It's a WordPress site. It's not all one word. There's spaces in between. So it's The Autistic Blogger. It's a WordPress site. So what I'm going to read is called Facing the Waves. This summer had many challenges. Some I wish not to explain for personal reasons. While most of my summer was boring due to excessive heat warnings, I felt closer to the ocean, physically and metaphorically. I must admit, there were times where I should have made plans with friends. I had all the time in the world, but I forgot. I had so much happen in 3 months. There was vacation, getting ready for school, preparing for the upcoming transition conference, and trying new things. It was like facing the ocean waves head on. So why am I using this analogy? Well, when a surfer wants to hang 10, he or she has to be strong, facing against the current. There are many waves in the ocean. Some are big and some are small. Some surfers use their mind to figure out which waves they want to ride, and others just go with the flow without thinking, and it's just like life. Smaller tasks and goals are less challenging than bigger ones. The bigger they are, the bigger the challenge, the harder it is. But that does not mean that you should quit firsthand before actually trying the bigger challenge. And when facing these waves, you either think about it or you just do it without thinking. Well, when I try to do things without thinking, I wipe out. Well, in other words, it means when I do not think about performing a task, I will do something wrong, and that leads to negative consequences. So no matter how big or small the waves are, I always need to think things through. Focusing on the task at hand gets me through the day. So throughout my summer, I faced 3 waves. So wave number 1 was getting ready for school. I really was not facing this wave yet. I was actually preparing myself for this huge wave. The reason for being so huge is that I was entering graduate school. Since I knew this was going to be advanced academically, which it is, one of my biggest challenges would be functioning in the program. As an undergraduate, I was used to having classes in the daytime, but now that it's grad school, all my classes will be at night. And I can tell you now that this huge wave was pretty easy to tackle the first day. Before I went into class, my sister and one-on-one aide, Natalie, prepared me to introduce myself to my professor, and it was simple. Just say my name, address my disability and needs for the classroom, and ask the professor to use the sheets for note takers and testing accommodations. And well, I did well on my first day. And I look forward to learning a lot in the MAX program. And in case you're interested, MAX means Masters of Arts in Communication Studies. They call it that to get students in, but it's really promoting advocacy. So, wave number 2, getting ready for the conference. This wave was very calm, especially since I had my mom and sister to help. In October, we would present at Arizona's 13th Annual Transition Conference, presented by the Arizona Department of Education. The presentation is called See the Possibilities, Finding Happiness, Blazing Trails, and Paving Paths. It highlights all the experiences I had from being diagnosed with autism and being placed in a special education classroom to being in graduate school with a college with thousands of people and learning to achieve independence. Well, getting signed up was easy, but getting my book out there is a lot tougher. I guess you can call this wave number 3, but since this is part of the conference, I prefer to call it wave 2.5. I was planning on giving a rough copy to someone, but I need to make sure there were no errors, and who better to look at it thoroughly than my mom? She told me, you need to go back and reread it again. It needs to make sense. Crash. I thought I had something decent. No, it turns out there were multiple errors. However, I did take Mom's advice and went back to reread it, and I proofread it. So far, I sent her a second revision, and hopefully this will be in time for ready for the conference, so fingers crossed it gets published, or at least a week later. So now we move on to a third wave, riding the actual waves from the ocean. So it was one of the things that I wanted to try before 2013 was over. Luckily, I had my chance. my uncle's brother rented this beach house on Malibu, and he hired this instructor to give the little ones surfing lessons as a gift. And I was able to tag along with them. So first, the instructor taught us what to do before we went in. It was just laying on the board and learning to push up. We also had to make sure to keep the leash on our legs to avoid losing the board. Since there were 6 surfboards and 7 of us, not including the instructor, all the kids went in. However, one of them got too scared and decided to back out. Before we went out there, we all dove under the waves because surfers need to go under to get way out there against the waves. And every time I went under, the waves would always push me back and I would be rolling before I get back up. So anyways, after one of the kids decided it was too much for them, I had the opportunity to try this at least one time. So I took my board out there, but I did not get very far. While the instructor and the rest of the kids were way out there, I wanted to be close. All right, I admit it. Deep water makes me uncomfortable, and my swimming skills are not ocean ready. And when I got in, I was too far back, and I would try paddling, but the waves wiped me out. And just like that, my time as a surfer was over. But hey, heck, the important thing to remember is that I tried it, and I had a lot of fun. I did not believe it at first, but my uncle convinced me so, and he's such a great person. So the surfing lessons were over. I decided to go back to boogie boarding, and Dad and I enjoyed the rest of our vacation and went home the next day. It is almost the end of August and the beginning of September, and next month Dad and I are planning to head to another beach, and we are going to the Grand Canyon, which I actually did, and that was my next adventure. As for facing the waves, it is better for me to face it metaphorically instead of literally. So this blog that you just heard was on the Autistic Blogger on WordPress. And just one more quick thing I want to note is my book, Finding Happiness. It started out as short memoir stories because I took a class on memoirs at Arizona State University, and it was by far one of the best classes I took. So it has stories in there from being at an educational conference in Orlando to how I got nominated and won by a landslide for Homecoming King, and mentioning how I've had a lot of friends over the years. And if you see the one over there, the one who's next to me, that was my homecoming queen. Her name is Chelsea Davis. If some of you have been watching CBS 5 lately, she's been doing the traffic temporarily, and if you ever go to the games, she is a Cardinals cheerleader. But the main thing is that she's just one of many people who is a big inspiration in my life. I'm glad to call her my best friend. She's so sweet and so amazing. So that's pretty much it. So I'm going to give this back to you. Thank you.
We of course couldn't fit all the amazing things, but I just want to give you a brief synopsis of high school. When Gregory was little, he didn't even want to talk about high school in the future. He would get so upset. High school came, and the first year was a challenge. And by his junior year, he was settled in, and they had asked him to do announcements because he knows movies. If any of you want to know about movies, talk to Gregory. He'll tell you when it's coming out on video, who was in the other movie that so-and-so was in. I can't keep track of it all. So they got to know his face, and So at Centennial High School, which wasn't our home school at the time, because we shopped schools, which most parents in time do. They say, you know, I want the best opportunity for my kids. So we shopped schools and he got his face out there. And at the end of the junior year, he's like, my picture is not in the yearbook enough. Okay. So he comes home one day and he's like, I'm gonna run for homecoming king. I just want to get nominated. I'm like, okay. And I said, well, I've always been, keep your feet on the ground and your head in the clouds. There's nothing above you, but nothing below you. So try it. And so he says he wants to get nominated. I'm like, okay, you gotta be realistic. Your school has made it to state 4 times for football, won 4 times. What, you got 2 guys who are on the football team running for a homecoming king? You got another guy who was in every club ever invented by school. And you have the cool kid on the motorcycle who just had to be part of the thing. So, you know, I just be realistic, be realistic. So he comes home and he's so excited because he got the nomination. And we are so excited. We are so excited. So very long story short, we are sitting the day of homecoming where you find out, and we're in the gym, and you don't find out till later in the night. We're sitting in the gym, and his one-on-one aide, Mrs. Plus, she's an amazing woman, she comes and she's like, I am so sorry I cannot be at the game. And we're like, okay. She's like, but I need to know who won. So she leaves and she comes back and she is looking all teary-eyed. And so I'm feeling all teary-eyed because I'm like, he lost, he lost. There's like 3,000 kids in this school, you know. How do you break it to them? And she's like still teary-eyed. She's like, you can't say anything. And I'm like, I won't. And I'm still thinking, he lost. So what am I waiting for? Come on. And she turns to me and she goes, he won by a landslide. And now this is important. This isn't other adults and everyone else. This is your peers. And what made a difference is that one person, that one Chelsea Davis of the world who said, you know what, I'm student body president, I'm cheerleading captain, I'm gonna pair up with the kid who doesn't fit everybody's thing because he's my friend. I knew him since 7th grade. And she went and spelled the big old name Ohanassian on everybody's blackboard. How can you not vote for the kid with the biggest name? We didn't know he was going to be autistic, so we added an extra G in Gregory, so, you know, how unfair. With that said, you know, this is about the possibilities, about seeing the possibilities and imagining the possibilities. And again, I hope you enjoy this quick little musical break in between, because we find things that inspire us along the way, and I am a geek, or a gleek, or whatever they're called. Gregory and I used to like to watch Glee together, so enjoy this, and we'll continue right after this brief musical intermission. Did I not hit the right key? We're not really breaking, let's see. We are just trying to find the right. Just a second, technical difficulties. There we go.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, but an only sky. Imagine all the people living life once again. Imagine there's no country. It's not hard to do. Nothing to die for.
You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine all eyes that shine. I wonder if you can. No need for creed or a brotherhood of man. National hero, sharing all the world. You may stay, I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one.
So with that said, some of our imagine and our possibilities was going to ASU and looking at a four-year school. Because one of the hardest things for someone autistic is change. And the change was, do we go to a two-year school and have to change again and change again and change again? So after a lot of requests and 2 years of talking, we start talking with ASU and we're told we've never had a program and things like that. We were lucky enough, the gentleman who wrote the story on the homecoming event, I found him at a, we were at, it was called, drawing a blank, it was called Against All Odds. Gregory had gotten a scholarship for school. And so we were there and he was there and I said, we're having some problems getting into ASU because they said we've never done this, we've never had an aide in the classroom. So I elbowed the reporter and I said, can you help me? And those are the words as parents and advocates we always want to remember is, can you help me? What, can you help me with this? Who do you know that I should know? And so on Mother's Day, 2009, this nice short little article came out that is graduating senior outguns autism. Well, we don't outgrow it and we don't turn a certain age and all of a sudden we're healed. But the fact of outgunning, this reporter took a chance and took the time to help somebody he met once and covered all of the different schools and what they had to offer for people with disabilities. It covered University of Arizona, Arizona State University, Northern Arizona University, continued on to the next page. I think they just about hit everyone. And what was great, no, not kidding, the day after, I get a call from ASU and said, no problem. With that said, I once heard no greater love has any man than to lay down his life for another. With that said, they okayed an aide, but they didn't provide an aide. And so his sister, who's 5 years his senior, said, no problem. I'm going to quit my full-time job. I'm going to quit my position that was leading into management and retail, which I love. Give me some clothes, give me some money, I'm happy. And I will go to school with my brother because I love school. Not. With that said, I'm going to introduce you to Natalie, who is Gregory's sister. She has opted to learn. She's not just, some people fill the little void of habilitation and respite. Took the time to learn what would be better, what would be tougher. If I was to say who's toughest on Gregory, it would be Natalie. So with that said, I'm going to turn this over to Natalie, and she's going to share a little bit of her experiences and possibilities.
Hi. First of all, I just want to say baby in the back is mine. So if you hear like that one's mine, another one on the way. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just the whole transition of everything from, okay, you can't wear that to school, about junior high, high school, people talk about, first impressions, don't, judge a book by its cover, and, that's hard to say because, when you come to an event or a conference, I think people look around and see, oh, that person's dressed up really nice, they must be a presenter, or that person, and again, working in retail, you kind of see that more often than others, but, you want, and you hope, especially family-wise, for, if you see something like that, for your brother to fit in or for somebody to fit in. And I've never really had a problem with the social part. Gregory's been really good with the academics. So for me, it's easy to say, okay, why don't we just, change this a little bit or do this. And, some of those little things have helped. But more than other, I think the real transition with everything was becoming his aide and really getting into, what is habilitation and what is respite and things like that, because not only could we work on the social, emotional, but we could go through and say, okay, you want to be more involved in school, you want to do this, what are your first steps? From things as simple as, how do I start a conversation with somebody? How do I talk to this girl? How do I, not everybody wants to hear that from their sisters, so it's nice to build a group of friends and community and things like that, where he can get other advice, and it doesn't necessarily have to be from family or things like that. Some of the other things that I was thinking about too, a big thing with transition, again, social. There was dances and prom and homecoming, which was a huge thing, and things like that. How do you fit in? How do you know what the right social cues are? How do you give those social cues without standing next to the person saying, this is what you do, this is what you say? Those are all the things that we worked on. A big help actually was, I guess, being 5 years older, because you could kind of blend in a little bit better. Being a chaperone or double dating on something. My husband was really good at doing that, and he looks really young for his age, so that helped. But that gave him the opportunity to mimic somebody. So if he was opening the door for me, he could open the door for somebody else without necessarily saying, okay, now what do you do next? What do you do next? Because obviously you could see that from a million miles away. So that was one of the things that helped out a lot. Transition to, especially at ASU, I think was the biggest thing. We went through a lot of changes, obviously, between just starting off, trying to figure out, like at any school, where you fit in, balancing out, the difference between your homework, your workload, to, what there is socially to offer. Just making the opportunity, we kind of, checked things out. He was at the time in education, and so there was a really great group on campus, not very big, but a good group called Teachers of the Future, and happened to sit in a couple of classes, saw that there were people that were very open and willing to just understand and to just, take the opportunity, I think, to know Greg. So the things I learned the very first time sitting in with him, not just in class, but in groups and stuff, is I personally like to dress like this, or I was in transition of still working my other job and then trying to work with him and coming back and forth. When you sit next to somebody and you're wearing a three-piece suit and, whatever, and all the college kids are wearing, some of them, again, the same age as me, some of them older, but, ASU hoodies, tie your hair up, whatever, they tend to almost talk through you to him instead of talking to him. So after about 2 classes, I figured that out quickly, and got to throw on ASU hoodie, leggings, boots, and tie my hair up, which was a nice change of pace, and say, yeah, this is, my friend, or if anybody asked, more about whatever, I'd say, this is my brother and everything. And it was just interesting to see how everything changed in the transition. They were more of, okay, let me talk to him, and we transitioned from me sitting next to him to in the back of the room to eventually, when I was having my first baby, outside of the room, because I had to leave frequently for bathroom breaks and things like that, to when it got to that point, just dropping him off to other people dropping him off. And he transitioned really well and built with the other groups and communities that he was with really good friendships, especially, the kids that were in the, kids are the same age as me, a lot of them, teachers of the future. But I think a lot of the big things was, again, finding the social, because it's there, and, groups and different things offer it. If it's not necessarily there, I had no problem creating the social. So we did a lot of charity events. We did a lot of social activities outside of there. Some of the things that college kids want to do, we talked about were, I want to go on spring break. I want to do, so you go, okay, how do we do this? So the whole group of Teachers of the Future, we decided to set up a spring break trip to Disneyland. So everybody went, and again, that wasn't necessarily part of the group, but again, it was creating that social environment to have that opportunity and that chance to build other relationships. He also, we did things from, let's go to Flagstaff and go sledding, let's do barbecues, let's do, and just including everybody. The good thing about a lot of the groups is Teachers of the Future was focused on or towards teachers, but it wasn't limited to teachers. And so the more that we did, the more that we saw other people that necessarily didn't have that, they weren't going for that degree, or they weren't going for anything in that area at all, but wanted to be a part of the group. So that was a really cool thing to kind of see, and to be able to see those people, who maybe don't always fit in, find more of a place, where they felt comfortable to show what their talents were and things like that. So, really that's a lot of, what I did as far as transition with Gregory. Again, the biggest thing is with the rehabilitation and the respite that he had is really finding the goals to kind of push him to, do his best, maybe outside of his comfort zone, but things that would help him and to help other people. And he seemed to do really, really well so far. So I'm trying to think. I apologize. My brain is, I will call the pregnancy brain card right now. Because I'm like, we do this a lot. We talk a lot at ASU for future teachers, and just kind of let them know, because I think that people see autism and they only know like one person or one side of it, or they see one thing, and I think a lot of times it's misleading. I think if you put somebody in a box, that's kind of it, that's how they see it. So it's nice to be able to be the exception, and especially with a lot of stuff at school, they didn't know what to do with me. ASU provided and let us have an aide, but I didn't fit after day 2 when I wasn't dressed in a 3-piece suit and, sitting there with a pen and a paper and this. I think a lot of people were confused, but once they figured out what we did and how he was successful and how, for the life of me, I could never do his homework, by the way. So, that was never, that was never the issue. But, to be able to help with that and transition, hopefully they have people down the road who, can do the same thing, because he's been really successful. It's not, telling him what to do or, giving him the answers. It's just giving him, small cues or the opportunity to, maybe double think something or, go back and really, get a chance. So, I think that's pretty much it.
I think the important thing that you need to know is that habilitation and respite does not cover someone going to school with you.
Yeah.
So though she provided rehabilitation and respite, that was totally separate from time in school. So her time, she's probably spent more time with Gregory in 3 or 4 years than probably once I got home from work than I did my home. And that's important to note. And the reason it's important to note is that just because you're part of a family doesn't mean that family is going to tune in to what your needs are. You know, if you have a cultural family, I married into, if you ever saw my big fat Greek wedding, I was the first non-prearranged marriage, okay? So when Gregory was diagnosed with autism, it was my fault. What did I do? How you as educators, I have to just look, and I'll just do it by eye shot without making someone stand up, but someone said to me, "I'm just a special ed teacher." I said, "Wait, no, you're not." So for those parents who have had those teachers that have allowed our children to want to go to school the next day, for those of you who have been the people who have said, "You can do it," and yeah, you know what, it's hard. And you might not always succeed the first time. Gregory's an awesome student, but had a test called, what was the test called?
The Arizona Education Proficiency Assessment.
The Arizona Education Proficiency Assessment. Okay. For someone with autism and straight A's, sounds like it should be easy, right? Not so much. What do you do if? How do you handle this if? They're not black and white scenarios. It's just like being like a student aid. Like, what do you do when Susie's juice box busts open? I don't know, they don't teach that in school. You know, how do you deal with so-and-so who wants to have a girlfriend in 2nd grade and they're kissing her? No, that's not okay. So, you know, how do you deal with those things? Well, you find your best fit. You find those pieces. What I'm going to do is actually skip ahead because I think we took a little longer in some areas. So just bear with my non-little, yes, you're going to miss the poor married with children slide there, and little Stewie there, We will move on over this here. And the reason why is because it's important. So I think we're going on the next slide. I'm not wearing my glasses. Okay. So one of the things I do want to address, because sometimes when you get into transition and you've dealt with schools and you've dealt with IEPs at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, sometimes meetings 4 times a year, then you get services from DDD, so you have the ISP, so that's another 4 meetings a year, sometimes 5. And so it's like square one all over again. And this, though, is about hope, and to understand hope and to understand the next thing, it is about facing those waves. It's about going under that water head on so you can catch the wave. And to do that, please know where parents come from, because at first it is shock. It's shock and denial. It's getting hit by that Mack truck. And as you go, you know, you have pain and guilt. It doesn't help if you have cultural diversity and they tell you it's all your fault. Ugh! Anger and bargaining. Ooh, what do you mean it's my fault? Or can I change this, or how do I change this? Depression, reflection, loneliness, but you know, the best part is the upward turn. It's that catching the wave, it's the reconstruction, it's the working through those things. It is the acceptance and the hope. It is these conferences and the Bradleys who do it so much better, who've been doing it for a long time. It's the people in these pictures. It is the students who don't care what the other students think. It is, I think somewhere down here, we have, let's see, I'm looking for it. I know it's in here somewhere. We have my son's DDD worker who came to his graduation. It is, you know, the people who show up, the unexpected people for the things that You wonder if they're there for you sometimes. So it's finding those possibilities. It's family. It's, you know, my daughter who doesn't attend ASU, doesn't have a college degree, but has an award from ASU. How do you do that? Let's see, in diversity, an award in diversity. How do you include other people? How do you get a community? How do you identify your community? How do you see the possibilities? Who are your cheerleaders? The ones who come back to you. I think he's the only guy who's standing next to two cheerleaders with his arms tight like this. You know, it's like, when most guys would be going, hey, baby. So, you know, it is counting all those blessings along the way and finding people to help you. It's remembering that you're in good company. You know, I had originally Bill Gates, Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, and Steven Spielberg. And my son corrected me and said, I believe Steven Spielberg is dyslexic. Okay, my apologies. So with that said, resources. Help people plug into their resources if they're not sure what they are. You know, people don't come with manuals. They don't come, you get pregnant and it's like you might as well get a shirt with a big old bullseye on it that says, please give me your advice. You have a child who has a disability and it's like, please tell me what you think I need to do now. And sometimes we do need to know, but what worked for you or your kid might not work for mine. What works for me, I'm telling our story. That might not be your story or somebody else's, but you know what? Give them hope. Give them the Bradleys of the world and the Gregorys of the world and the sisters like Natalie of the world to say there's people out there. Give them the special ed teachers who go that extra mile to say, not I'm going to try to make a difference, but I will make a difference. It's that I. You're looking for the I, you're the I. People used to say, what do you want to do or what do you want to be when you grow up or whatever. And you know, you hear be the change you want to see in the world. So now I'm asked, what's my goal? I'm like, I'm changing the world. You know, and you do it one piece at a time. So you recognize those resources, you point people in the right direction, and if you don't have the right people, fighting for your kids or fighting for someone else's kids, and you hear somebody say, I'm sorry, none of it was meant to be negative, but I was sitting in something today, I'm just going to say I was sitting in something today and leave it at that, but I heard somebody use the word save, about saving our children. And it's like, you know what? I have a faith, my child's saved. I'm not sure what you're talking about. But find that peace. Find that peace that gets them. Gregory loves movies. You know, find that peace that connects with them. If they want to go for something, don't give them the reasons they can't. Find the reasons that they can. And you guys are the reasons. You stop and you sit, you take your time in this conference, in any class that you're sitting with, and you hear about bringing your A game. You know what? Again, some of those parents, they brought their A game for so long that it might look like a D game to you, but they're bringing their A. That's all they can bring. So sometimes you got to bring them up, and sometimes too, hopefully you run into those parents that bring you up and say, you know what? Our graduation party for Gregory, you know it was for Gregory, you asked him. All of the educators that came, we told them, this party is for you. This is about you. So with that, I think if you're lucky enough, we might possibly be done. You're like, man, can that woman talk? I think they make medication for people like me. And the only thing I want to say, just go out there and change the world. We have information up here if you want to look at it in articles. You're welcome to. Are you going to go up there? Are you going to look at that? On stuff and all the tea bags. Are you going to go look at the Excuse me. Sorry. in there like words. So how do you together? I would like to do that.